The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 144, in which we will be looking at Season 2, Episode 7 of the TV series, and Episode 20 of the series overall, The Great Game. I'm still showcasing Watership Down themed art, details in the notes. Please let me know if you would like your Watership Down themed art to appear as the podcast title image for an episode with full credit given. Anyway, let the games begin. Season 2, Episode 7, The Great Game. The 20th episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in the UK on the 14th of September 2000. It was written by Mary Crawford and Alan Templeton. There will be a link to the episode in the notes. In the original novel Watership Down, there is a playful element of the storytelling involving the tales of El Herrera that takes the narrative even further from our world than a story in which the only demand made on the reader is that rabbits can speak. These tales, and the telling of them, expect us to accept, for example, that a storytelling rabbit living in the Hampshire countryside in the late 60s has heard of camels, as in the tale of Rowsby Woof. To that extent, this episode of the Watership Down TV series is very much in tune with that sense of playfulness, as it pays direct tribute to the tale of the trial of El Herrera, while not actually telling the original tale. After last week's apple-based distraction, the focus of the action moves back to Ephrata. Hazel and Primrose approach the message tree near Ephrata, dodging a wide patrol led by Vervain, to find no stone in the hollow. They have not had any kind of message from Campion for 2 full moons now. This means Campion is still under arrest in Ephrata, or worse. Primrose recalls Fiver's recent vision about the one who saves them not being able to be saved. Hazel promises her they will find out what has happened to Campion. Back on Watership Down, Hazel asks Hannah the mouse if she is sure she wants to carry out her mission, which is dangerous. She replies that being a mouse is dangerous. Hannah climbs on Keehar's back, and Bigwig tells him to get her as close to Ephrata as he can. Flying low into the woods near Ephrata, Keehar and Hannah fly over a terrapin as he makes his way along a path. More of him later. Expertly gliding right by the Ephratan guards, Keehar delivers Hannah into a grass pile right by the warren as she jumps off him without Keehar even touching the ground. She quickly makes her way past 2 snoozing guards right by the main entrance and soon finds Campion being escorted by Owsla member Moss to see Vervain again. Campion is in a bad way, again, and is pushed roughly by another Owsla member when he pauses. A shocked Hannah follows and then has to dodge the 2 guards from the entrance who seem to think something got past them. Dodging these, Hannah gets a good vantage point to view Campion's interrogation. As Woundwort looks on, Vervain asks, seemingly for the latest of many times, where Campion was on the night of the attack on Redstone Warren. Campion said he's bored of answering the same question over and over. He went out on patrol. How did he know about the snares at Cowslip's Warren? He met a rabbit from Cowslip's Warren who told him about them. Technically, this is sort of true. There were rabbits from Cowslip's Warren with the rabbits of Watership Down when he found out, but Vervain laughs in disbelief, and you can see why, in spite of his cruelty. Why did Campion resist arrest? His place was with his chief. Where is Hazel's Warren? Hannah looks on fearfully, waiting for the answer to this. But Campion says he has no idea, and that is actually true. Vervain orders Campion's sulphate time cut again to help jog his memory, despite Moss protesting that he is already on 1/4 rations. Vervain also reminds Moss that Campion is no longer an Owsla officer and to stop calling him Sir. As Campion is led away, Woundwort tells Vervain that Campion won't last much longer if he keeps starving him. Perhaps he is telling the truth, but Vervain is convinced that Campion is hiding something, which, of course, he very much is. Vervain adds he will find out what it is, even if it kills Campion. Shocked and angry, Hannah leaves. So far, so dark in theme. But don't worry. Things are about to get, in the words of the Monty Python army officer I quoted in the episodes about the rabbit's trip to the seaside, silly. Back on Watership Down, under the autumn leaves of the beech tree, there is a general outrage at Campion's treatment. He saved Woundwalt's life at the Warren of the Shining Wires, Dandelion points out, and this is how he is treated. Bigwig tries to be pragmatic. Campion knew the risks when he agreed to spy for Watership Down, but Fiver isn't having it. Hazel goes back to something Fiver said earlier, about Campion having already been tried and convicted. This has got him thinking about the tale of the trial of Ella or Ella Clara, as he should be called. As a brief recap, the main points of the story are repeated. At a time when Prince Rainbow was really not Ella Clara's best friend, he planted a rabbit named Hufsa in his warren to spy on him. And when Ella Clara was put on trial for stealing carrots that had been deliberately planted to tempt him, a plan was put in place that made Hufsa, the spy for Prince Rainbow, look not very credible. After that, not even the jury of Alil would convict Ella Clara. Hazel's plan is now to do the same to Vervain. Pipkin's talents are put to use, getting help from the local wildlife. Keehar is told to keep track of Vervain's whereabouts, and Hannah the Mouse is asked how she fancies being a hedge wizard. She says yes, and then asks what that is. Pipkin and Hazel first visit Yona the Hedgehog and ask if she can sing. She says yes. Next they talk to a moorhen, asking if she can swim. She says she cannot, as she is not a duck. Point of order, I'm no ornithologist, but from the information I have found, moorhens very much can swim, albeit not as well as ducks. Unlike Horak the pheasant in the original story, so why change this to a moorhen? Next, Hawkbit, standing in as Rabscuttle from the original story, is reluctantly coated in dark red mud from the river, with Pipkin delivering the final dollop to Hawkbit's face and informing him he looks like an overgrown berry. Keehar and Hannah arrive to say that Vervain's patrol is just downstream. Hazel says it is time. They have to make Vervain believe the impossible. Campion's life depends on it. Not far away, Vervain's patrol are very usefully told by Vervain to go and find him some Flayra. Thus he is isolated conveniently for Hazel's plan to start taking effect. Hazel and Hannah look on, and Hazel tells Hannah to make her entrance from a hollow log by Vervain. Hannah, who is already wearing a white collar of petals, pulls the top off another yellow flower to make herself a hat. She explains this makes her look more magical. It is another very Disney moment. They enter the log at the furthest end from the bank, and Hannah makes her way to the other end. With a thumbs up to Hazel, she bellows to Vervain that he is a valiant rabbit. He asks in shock who is there. Apparently, it is Hannah Malana, the mighty hedge wizard. The valiant Vervain, who hasn't even seen her yet, begs her not to hurt him. At that point, this mystical figure appears in a puff of red smoke, or rather, bark dust dug out by Hazel. The hedge wizard explains that she has come to grant Vervain's secret wish. She knows this is to capture the rabbits, Hazel, Bigwig and Fiver. How can she know this, he asks. She knows all, and she will give them to him. But he has to believe in the magic of the hedge wizard first. A Vervain whose brains appear to have drained out of his ears says he will. He does. He must also walk the enchanted trail, if he dares. There is the sound of a sneeze from the log. Vervain asks what it is. The apprentice hedge wizard, apparently, but Hannah says not to mind him. Vervain joins Hannah Malana on the enchanted trail. Meanwhile, apprentice hedge wizard Hazel sneezes again from all the bark dust. Meanwhile, Bigwig has given Yona the hedgehog a bed of rose petals to roll in. As a result, she now resembles a hedgehog completely covered in pink rose petals, albeit quite well arranged. She thinks she looks festive. That's one word for it. Keehar warns of the approach of Vervain. Bigwig tells Yona to be as strange as she possibly can. She shouldn't find that a problem. Yona takes cover. Vervain arrives with Hannah Malana for the first part of the rabbit capturing spell. This involves conjuring up Mad Hedgehog. The magic words to achieve this are Stepper, Lapper, Dilicus, which Vervain repeats despite saying it sounds a bit silly. Miraculously, this incantation immediately makes Mad Hedgehog appear. She immediately sings the Sluggermoon song that appears in the novel's telling of the tale of the trial of El Herrera, only without repeating Sluggermoon and adding the line, "and send me lots of slugs really soon." Vervain asks what she is doing. She is singing to the moon for her slug supper, in case that wasn't already clear. But, Vervain points out, it is daytime. Ignoring the fact that the moon is in the sky during the day just as much as at night, Mad Hedgehog points out that this is the best time to sing to the moon, as she isn't busy shining. A fair point, I suppose. However, in the original story this song is sung on a moonlit night, so this Iona has improvised well. And twirling around with the line, "O Sluggermoon, hear my tune and slug me soon," she is gone. Hannah Malana informs Vervain that the spell is very good so far, but now they must find a swimming moorhen. She seems to be adopting some kind of accent, though I'm not sure what it is. Vervain repeats the assertion that moorhens cannot swim, but is asked impatiently if he wants to put a spell on Hazel or not. And for this question, Hannah's accent is back to normal, that is to say her Lancashire accent. Once they're gone, Bigwig thanks Iona, who carries on singing. Bigwig says enough. By the river, the moorhen, who is called Ruffle, is having second thoughts, but Pipkin reassures her that the terrapin we saw at the start of the episode, who is called Slate, won't let her sink. Slate nods. Keehar warns that Vervain is on the way. Ruffle climbs on Slate's back and he wades into the river as she nervously keeps her balance. Arriving at the river, Hannah says she feels the spell is getting strong. And then Vervain spots a swimming moorhen and says there must be something wrong with her. Hannah stifles a laugh. Ruffle replies that moorhens always swim in the autumn. It makes her feathers grow. For good measure, she adds that he is a silly rabbit. According to Hannah, the trail of enchantment is leading them good. Next, Hannah says they will find Frith's messenger. Vervain is still sceptical, but she replies that if the spell is good, he will grant Vervain his wish. The 3 rabbits will be his prisoners. Vervain wishes Woundwort were here, but Hannah Malana says 1 wish per customer. In a nearby clearing, Hawkbit is unrecognisable. He is dark red from the mud, and his ears are disguised by what looks like a Dumala turban made out of leaves and bark. We may be getting into an awkward area here. A grey rabbit with an English accent has made himself darker in colour and is wearing a turban. Maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but I doubt such a scene would be made now, nearly quarter century later. In the original novel, all Rabscuttle does is dye his tail red and festoon his ears with bryony. To top it off, he sticks an old cigarette butt in his mouth. Anyway, the disguised Hawkbit is making a pile of grass, which Keehar lands in to tell him Vervain is coming. Hawkbit says fine, he can't wait for this to be over, as he climbs onto a large rock. As Hannah Malana and Vervain enter the clearing, she intones the incantation to manifest Frith's messenger. This turns out to be, "Oi, Frith's messenger, we're looking for you." Frith's messenger miraculously lands in the pile of grass and announces himself with the words, "Right, here." Vervain asks in amazement if he comes from Frith. "Right out of the sky, mate," is the response. Hawkbit really doesn't do mystical. He says to get down to it. Vervain wants Hazel, Bigwig and Fiver? Raising his paws to the sky, he invokes the incantation Alabazoom. We are definitely in Middle Eastern cliché territory here. Disney's Aladdin had come out 8 years earlier and is now accompanied by a warning that it contains racial stereotypes. No sooner has Frith's messenger uttered this spell than Bigwig, Fiver and Hazel come hopping into the clearing, their ears flat, paws stuck out in front of them. In unison they say, "Woundwort is our master." Vervain is ecstatic and tells them to follow him to Ephrafa. But the 3 zombie-like rabbits repeat that Woundwort is their master. They only follow him. Vervain complains to Frith's messenger, but he says this is the best he can do. So Vervain tries something else. He asks them if Campion is a traitor to Ephrafa. The prepared response is that they will only tell Woundwort. This is enough for Vervain, who says he will get Woundwort, adding that all Ephrafa will honour him. Will the 3 rabbits stay, he asks. Frith's messenger says that as they are under a spell, he imagines so. Telling Hannah Malana she is the best hedge wizard in the world, Vervain is gone, saying he will be back. They all fall about laughing. Hannah repeats Vervain's compliment to keep this going before Hazel says they now need to clear away any sign of what has happened. Back at Ephrafa, a hysterical Vervain arrives shouting to get Campion and call the general. Moss comments that all Owlser officers are mad. As Kehar flies overhead, Vervain says to Woundwort that they won't need the army after all. Why army? Why not just Owsla? He can deliver the 3 Watership down rabbits himself. Woundwort says that would be a clever trick. He seems sceptical. Vervain adds that they will confirm that Campion is a traitor. Campion is looking the weakest we have seen him, but he has the spirit to tell Vervain he is salivating. Woundwort asks why Vervain won't explain how he did this. Vervain says it is difficult to explain. He'd rather show Woundwort. As they head out, Woundwort says he will be very displeased if this turns out to be a waste of his time. Hawkbit is finding it hard returning to his original colour. He says this had better work. Bigwig says Vervain is superstitious. Hazel adds that they have to convince Woundwort he has gone mad. Hannah comments the whole of Ephrafa is mad. Kehar arrives to let them know Woundwort is on his way with a patrol and Campion. Bigwig says this just might work. At the log, Vervain is explaining to Woundwort about the hedge wizard who looked like a mouse coming out of it. Woundwort growls. Vervain says she must still be with the others and calls out for her. Moss says to Campion that Vervain seems a bit off. He calls him Sir. Campion says he could get into trouble for that. Moss replies that's his lookout. At the rosebush, Vervain tries invoking Yona the singing hedgehog, the one covered in flower petals. As he tries to make sure he gets the words right, Campion spots a petal on the ground, which he covers with his paw. Vervain says he just wanted the general to see the singing hedgehog, but never mind. There isn't far to go until they get to the prisoners. Woundwort asks Moss if Vervain has been acting strangely. No more than usual is the response. By the river, Vervain swears he saw a swimming moorhen. Woundwort says perhaps she drowned, to which Vervain responds by saying about how they swim to grow new feathers. Woundwort was not aware of this. Nervously, Vervain suggests they press on. And at the clearing, shockingly, Bigwig, Fiver and Hazel are gone. Moss is told to check for tracks. There are none. Vervain swears they were here. He explains about Frith's messenger, who apparently merely had some ivy around his ears. He tries the incantation again. It doesn't work. He says they said Campion was a traitor, which they actually didn't, of course. Somewhat inadvisedly, all the Watership down rabbits and Kehar are listening from on top of the rock Hawkbit jumped off. Wouldn't one scout have been enough? Woundwort has had enough. He asks if they told Vervain that cows can jump over the moon. Vervain starts to beg, but it is too late. Woundwort tells Moss to take Vervain back to Ephrafa and put him to work with the slaves. He is relieved of his command. Moss is only too happy to carry out this order. He tells Vervain they had better go before the toadstool fairies get him. Is this a drug reference? Vervain is led away, gibbering about mice wearing flowers, etc. With Vervain gone, Woundwort says to Campion he should never have listened to him. He trusts Campion completely and reappoints him captain of Owsla. Sadly, Campion says he will always do his duty for Ephrafa. Once they're gone, Bigwig says Campion must feel like a slug. Hazel says the time has come to get Campion out of Ephrafa. He has done enough. Bigwig agrees. Campion is clearly one of them. Back at Ephrafa, Vervain is still raving. Moss is no longer calling him Sir, as he tells him to magically dig a rock out. Vervain screams at Campion as he passes and tries to attack him, but he is restrained. He shouts that he sees Campion, that he knows his heart. He wishes the Black Rabbit of Inlay upon him. And, of course, he is right about Campion, who makes his way into the woods. In the wood, Campion meets Hazel and Primrose, who tell him they've come to take him to their warren. But he says no. They need him where he is so they can be told of Woundwort's plans. So Hazel offers to let him know where their warren is in case he needs to escape. But Campion says he doesn't want to know. That way he can't reveal it. What can they do for him? Primrose asks. Campion says just to stay happy and free and not let Woundwort win. That will be enough to make it all worthwhile. He leaves. Primrose doesn't understand. Hazel says Campion is a warrior and Woundwort is his chief. Primrose points out the glaring contradiction. He is betraying his chief. Hazel says that is Campion's tragedy. The sun sets. Is it canon? An interesting one, this. Although this episode does not faithfully retell part of the original novel, it does nevertheless represent the first attempt to recreate the trial of El Carrara on film, and the way it does it is interesting. However, I do wonder how likely it is that Vervain would be fooled by a tale he surely would be aware of. Or is this Ephrata an atheistic warren where the tales of El Carrara are unknown? In any case, I think we can grant this one semi-canonical status for its semi-reenactment of one of his major tales. Next time, in a break with the usual one episode per episode, we take advantage of the happy coincidence that Christmas is approaching and begin the first of a 3-part Frithmas special.